let's do an experiment. Imagine we drop you, just you, no backpack, no phone, no bottled water, into a forest 300,000 years ago. Give it a few hours and you'll be thirsty. Give it a day and thirst will be the only thing you can think about. Humans can survive weeks without food. Without water, you have maybe 3 days before your organs start shutting down. So you find some, a pool of water sitting quietly between the trees. Congratulations, you have just reached one of the most dangerous decision points in human history, because this pool of water might save your life, or it might be full of an invisible army that ends it, and you have absolutely no way of knowing which just by looking at it. No microscope, no lab, no germ theory that's still about 299,650 years away. Just your eyes, your nose, your gut, and a few 100,000 years of accumulated trial and error passed down to you from people who mostly guessed right. So how did they do it? How did a species with zero understanding of biology manage to drink from lakes, rivers, and puddles for hundreds of thousands of years without wiping itself out? Turns out the answer is 1 part biology, 1 part detective work, and 1 part something a lot like culture hacking evolution. First, let's talk about what's actually hiding in that water. Bacteria, protozoa, parasites, microscopic organisms that don't care about you at all. They're just trying to replicate, and your intestines happen to be an excellent hotel. Here's a number to sit with. Even today, with sewage systems, soap, and modern medicine, contaminated water still contributes to roughly 500,000 deaths every year. That's with all our technology stacked in our favor. Now delete all of it. No plumbing, no boiling pots, not yet anyway. No concept that invisible things can even make you sick. For early humans, drinking the wrong water wasn't just an inconvenience. In a group of 20 or 30 people, a single bad water source could take out a hunter, a mother, half the children within days. No ambulance, no antibiotics, just a very quiet, very fast way for a family group to disappear from the fossil record entirely, which means figuring out which water wouldn't kill you wasn't a nice skill to have. It was one of the actual filters of natural selection. The humans who got better at reading water survived to have children. The ones who didn't. So over hundreds of thousands of years, evolution did something it's very good at. It cheated. It didn't give early humans a microscope. It gave them something cheaper and, frankly, kind of lazy. Disgust. That instinctive recoil you feel at a rotten smell, that's not random. Smell receptors are tuned to detect the exact chemical byproducts of bacterial decay, the sulfurous, ammonia-like compounds that show up when organic material starts breaking down. You don't need to know what a coliform bacteria is. You just need to flinch. Same story with taste. Humans are unusually sensitive to bitterness compared to a lot of other mammals, and that's not an accident either. Bitterness in nature correlates suspiciously well with toxicity, whether it's in a plant, a berry, or water laced with certain contaminants. So a cautious first sip, swirled and tested before swallowing, was a built-in, no-training-required chemistry test. And sight? Moving, clear water was instinctively more appealing than still, murky water. And this one actually holds up scientifically. Stagnant water is a 5-star resort for bacteria and parasites. Flowing water is aerated, harder to colonize, constantly refreshing itself. None of this required understanding why. Evolution doesn't care about explanations. It only cares about results. And humans who felt disgusted by the right things at the right time quietly outsurvived the ones who didn't. But instinct alone wasn't enough, because plenty of deadly water looks, smells, and tastes completely fine, which means early humans needed a second system, a backup. And this is where it gets interesting, because the backup wasn't biological, it was cultural. Here's a strange way to think about it. Culture is basically a second immune system. Instead of being encoded in your DNA, the information is encoded in stories, habits, and rules, passed from a parent's mouth into a child's memory instead of from a parent's genes into a child's cells. Slower to build, way faster to update. One of humanity's oldest cultural technologies was, essentially, outsourcing risk assessment to animals. Think about it from an information standpoint. Every animal drinking regularly from a water source is a tiny, walking experiment that already ran the test for you. If deer, horses, and birds were drinking from a spot every day and thriving, that water had already passed a trial by 100 other test subjects before a single human took a sip. Early humans followed game trails, not just to hunt, but because those trails were, quite literally, maps to statistically verified drinking water. Birds were an especially good signal, since many species are surprisingly picky and avoid heavily fouled water. A pond buzzing with bird life, probably fine. A pond with an eerie absence of any animal activity at all, in an otherwise busy landscape, treat with extreme suspicion. Plants told their own story too. Certain reeds and grasses only grow around clean, consistently flowing water, so their presence became a kind of natural signage. Thick algae blooms or dead vegetation at the water's edge worked the other way, an ancient warning label, millions of years before anyone invented warning labels. None of this was written down, because writing wouldn't exist for hundreds of thousands more years. It didn't need to be. It just needed to be remembered and repeated and trusted enough that a parent could say, "Not that pond," and a child would listen without needing a reason why. Eventually, humans stopped being satisfied with just finding safe water and started making water safer, which, if you think about it, is a wildly ambitious project for a species that didn't know germs existed. Fire changed everything. Once early humans could reliably heat water, boiling likely got discovered by accident, since water heated with fire-warmed stones simply tasted better and made people sick less often. Nobody understood that heat was denaturing proteins in bacterial cells. They just noticed boiled water meant fewer stomach problems. Good enough. Do it again. Then came filtration. Sand, charcoal, layers of cloth, pushing water through material until it came out clearer. And clearer turned out to be a surprisingly good proxy for safer, even without any chemistry to back it up. Some of the oldest medical texts we've ever discovered, from ancient Egypt and India, describe filtering water through sand and charcoal, techniques that almost certainly weren't invented from scratch, but inherited from tens of thousands of years of trial and error, stretching back into deep prehistory. Slowly, without a single controlled experiment, humans had reverse-engineered the basics of water sanitation using nothing but pattern recognition and consequences. And here's the part that's almost poetic. A lot of this hard-earned knowledge didn't stay practical. It fossilized into myth. Cultures across the world developed stories about spirits guarding clean springs or curses attached to stagnant, forbidden pools. Strip away the supernatural language, and what you're often looking at is compressed survival data, turned into a story because a story is stickier than a statistic, and easier to enforce with fear than with an explanation nobody had the tools to give yet. "Don't drink from the still pond, the spirit will curse you," is, functionally, an early public health campaign. It worked for the same reason effective warnings work today. It was simple, it was repeated, and breaking the rule had visible consequences. So let's zoom out for a second. No single early human ever discovered how to identify safe water. There was no eureka moment, no lone genius. It was millions of small, unglamorous decisions. A sniff here, a hesitant sit there, a child watching which pond the birds avoided, compounding across thousands of generations, refined by nothing more sophisticated than the fact that the people who guessed wrong didn't get to pass on their guesses. It's almost unsettling to think about. You exist right now because an unbroken chain of ancestors, stretching back further than you can really picture, kept making one correct call after another at the edge of rivers and ponds they didn't understand at all. One long streak of educated guesses, and here you are. There's no dramatic lesson here, no grand design, just evolution's cheap tricks, animals doing free quality control, and a species clever enough to turn its mistakes into stories worth remembering. And somehow that was enough. If you want to go deeper, we've linked some video about early water purification techniques. And if you like stories that take something you've never thought twice about, consider subscribing. It helps more than you'd think. Thanks for watching. See you next time.